Okay, welcome. Today we have Brady Iverson with us, and Trevor Hagen is co-hosting. A quick little bio on Brady. He is a biologist specializing in botany and mycology, an acclaimed photographer, haiku poet, and a brilliant musician too. And we have Trevor Hagen with us. He has a creative studio based out of Salt Lake City and has worked on Emmy Award winning productions, and we're thrilled to have him here. I was just going to tell you, Trevor, how I met Brady was at Bring Your Mom to Jam Night. So that was super fun.
Amazing. Best place to meet great people. Yeah, that's like no surprise to me. Of course that's where you guys met.
Like 50 hippies and a bunch of rock and roll. That's all you need.
Oh, wait a minute. This is the hippie movement. I knew it.
We're talking
out.
LSD.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So Trevor, since you are our co-host of honor, I am going to let you take over and guide us here for a second.
Oh, man. Well, okay. So I have so many questions for Brady, and I think a lot of conversations to be had in a very short amount of time. So I'm going to jump right to it. And, there's one thing I think that's on everybody's mind, and that's, the whole topic of climate change, right? And what are some very real potential solutions to that, as human beings? What can we actually do? The paper straws that I'm getting, in my Starbucks don't seem to be really, doing it in ways of hitting the goals that we have. But so, when we're talking about mycelium, mushrooms, all of that, it's such a giant topic that I think, is really deep, right? That people don't quite understand the potential like impacts that this could have on our environment at large. So I guess maybe like my first thing is maybe if you don't mind, like talk to us just a little bit about, before going into the solution, maybe just like what you know about the environmental impact that factory farming is having, you know what I mean? And like, let's maybe talk about like the methane emissions and kind of what's going on.
So, I mean, methane is our number one contributor to global warming. It's 4 to 8 times more effective at trapping heat than CO2. And it comes from cows mostly. Like cows are the number one source of methane on the planet.
So wait, are we talking cow emissions?
Cow emissions.
Yeah. Okay. So is it litterally cow farts?
Yeah, right? And burps, mostly burps. If we're being technical, because on account of the stomach thing, they just like move stuff back and forth between stomachs all the time. And when they bring some cut up to chew it up some more because it's not chewed up enough, they usually do a lot of burping. As far as I understand.
Okay, I have to break in here with a totally irrelevant thing. My dad, when I was a kid, had this idea for this whole ecological house, and the heater and the like all of the electricity was going to be run off of cow emissions.
Yeah.
Like cow farts.
Methane capture.
Yeah. That he had much more to this elaborate plan of what was going to happen, but I didn't know this was a real thing.
That's a cool thing that's actually becoming sort of widely spread. It's a super cheap option for capturing burnable natural gas. Just like get a big balloon, like a huge balloon, like size of a car, and you take all your cow poop or your chicken poop or whatever you got, and you stick it in this balloon, and it'll emit methane as the bacteria sort of eats through it that came out of with all the rest of the fecal matter.
I thought,
and that, kids, is how science works.
It's
okay.
Crazy.
We do experiments,
houses, and cooking with it and stuff. It's amazing.
Those are the experiments that I would have. Man, my science class teacher really got it wrong in 4th, 5th grade. Man, if they want to capture the attention, let's go for the cow.
It could be so fun, like explosions and fire. Let's go,
man. Throw some cow feces in a car. You know what I mean? Let's get a long fuse and just, Wile E. Coyote style.
You just capture it for like a week, dude. Then get to the playground and just blow it up.
But like honestly, like it sounds funny. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, honestly. Like, oh, cow farts are actually, the problem. When really, I mean, it's scientifically proven that is the case. It's just we can't see it as much as we can see like giant plumes of smoke going up in the air from factory farming. Like that one makes more sense, but it's crazy that they both, play a role.
It's bizarre. Like it's just the infrastructure people.
So basically we have to get we have to get off of our addiction as a species to cows
Yeah.
somehow in order to really, otherwise do you I don't know if there's really a solution to this problem if we continue, you know, this need for a hamburger every, you know,
What
10
percentage
milliseconds.
of the problem is cow farts?
It's massive. I think it's like 40%,
Really?
40
So-
to 60.
A little
It's
more
incredibly
than you hate the
huge.
straws.
It's incredible.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that goes with this big issue of what now 97% of animals on the planet are non-wild.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Or at least terrestrial animals.
Mhm.
Okay, so well let's segue now then to okay, so what is the role then that mushrooms could play in helping us transition, both factory farming wise and through our habits of eating way too much
I
cow?
think there's so much opportunity in this field. Like America has this fungophobia thing built into the society somehow, but the more research we do with mushrooms, the more different types of cancers that they seem to address, just like in ingesting them, even the ones that taste awesome. Like shiitake mushrooms, according to Paul Stamets, address
Yes.
almost every cancer you could think of. And I mean, just that kind of thing. It's everywhere, but people don't eat them enough. And including, you know, anemia issues, like they provide a lot of iron and they're chock full of protein, which is probably the most important as far as that
Yeah.
transition goes.
I was
That's-
reading like that mushrooms like portobello, you mentioned shiitake, the oyster mushrooms as well. They can contain up to like 3-ish grams of protein per 100 grams. So that's, I mean, it's not as much as meat, but they also contain other things that meat doesn't contain, like fiber, tons of vitamins and
tons
minerals.
of vitamin D and
Right.
I mean, just
I
calcium.
did not know that actually.
There's
before
so
this.
much nutrition in there that I think before society we would have gotten a lot more of, and that might address a lot of the strange sort of modern societal ills that we're seeing in the last, you know, 75 years or so, 50 years. I mean, just the autoimmune diseases and stuff like that could be
Right.
It's just so much. It's a huge
Yeah.
huge field in question. It's
It's
hard to address.
Fun that they're actually starting to research
Mhm.
some of these and
Finally.
actually do some studies on some of these more functional or medicinal mushrooms, which I don't know. I think they're all functional, medicinal, and magical.
And well, I mean, the magical part is obviously what has created the fungophobia, but we'll get into that when we talk a little bit more about the the psychology.
Thanks.
But because I mean, I'm sure we would all agree, right? If there wasn't like the magic, you know, like the psychedelic aspect of like shrooms, right? I think that they would be, or like, I don't know, society would, especially the conservative, you know, American society that often controls politics, would be much more open, right, to all of these health benefits. And I as well see it because, you know, I tried to eat vegan for about a year, but I started wasting away. I wasn't doing it the right way. I wasn't getting the right protein that I needed. I was just like, oh, I'm healthy because I'm not eating meat, dives into a bag of Dorito chips. You know what I mean? So, you know, seeing solutions like mushrooms, and it doesn't surprise me with how magical they really are, right? That they would also be able to sustain life in so many different areas, but blew me away actually that they had so much protein content to them. And I wish I would have known that. And, you know, now knowing that, you know, I do see it as a potential solution to, yeah, veganism, vegetarianism, whatever, to allow us as a species to hopefully not only get off of, you know, our addiction to cow meat, but thrive without it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I mean, the coolest part is you can grow them on almost any biomass. Like
So
you take
great.
coffee grinds, wood chips, you take just old compost vegetables, or I've seen them grown. Paul Stamets did this experiment like mid 2000s where it was, but they had a bunch of gasoline spilled or something in the field. And so they spread wood chips all over and just tilled that all up into a great big pile and then put some Pleurotus austratus, the oyster mushroom, in there. And it just,
Oh my gosh.
it eliminated gasoline by like 97% in like 6 months or something. and it had
Incredible.
just broken down hydrocarbons into usable compounds and grown
Well,
on it, and
it's
it does
like
that everywhere.
wow, yeah.
They're so specialized. They can break down compounds that no other life can. Well, we've
Why
got
aren't
our
we
own.
using this? Like that's been out for years and
It's insane.
still we're not like actually taking it into, is it just about monetizing it or what, you know?
Fungophobia,
Yeah.
like you said.
Fungophobia.
Yeah.
We have a funny thing with the fungophobia, specifically in America too. Just adding to the whole magic aspect is there's a mushroom here called the destroying angel, or the angel of death, and it's just little
Ye-
cute
bo-
little white guy, broken veil, just like white as snow. And I like in Asia they don't have that kind of thing, where they're, the least fungophobic country in the world, they have mushrooms like that are just perfectly edible.
Hmm.
And they have mushrooms everywhere that are really edible, but those ones scare people off, I think, like that kind of thing. In fact, I think that 90% of like mushroom deaths in America, or 70%, are Asian immigrants that come over and see that mushroom and think they recognize it as that one that's delicious back home, and then bring it home and eat it and die of what I think it's a neurotoxin.
Wow.
Mm.
Is that the one that looks like Amanita, but it's white?
Yeah, they're related. I think they're both
An-
amanitas.
An Amanita. Okay.
I'm not positive on that. I
Yeah.
think they're both agaric
Def-
though, at least. Like a
Agaricus.
yeah.
Well, that's a
Like
great
Joe.
that's a
About
great
it.
name for that. Great name for that mushroom, and a great name for a potential band.
That's what I
Right?
was just
Yeah, heavy
thinking.
metal, probably.
Nice.
A little
Norwegian.
psychedelia.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, like a neo psychedelic heavy metal Scandinavian band. Let's go for it,
I
guys.
heard this band
You're
last
welcome.
year.
Somebody runs with that. You got to give Trevor the.
I just want 10%. Wait, okay, tell me about this band you had
Your
last
band,
year.
yeah.
I can't
We're
remember.
getting-
I can't remember the name of it, but it's very much in that strain, dude. They might sue us. No pun intended.
Oh man.
There's a lot of music that has been influenced, not to totally sidetrack us, but that has been influenced.
Yes, and if you haven't heard Infected Mushroom, please stop whatever you're doing and go listen to Infected Mushroom and come back.
Okay.
But yeah, not you guys though. Don't you
But
guys
I'm
stop.
editing.
I'll do it, dude. I'm
We're
down.
going now.
I'm sold. I'll be back in 45 minutes.
Okay, so I mean, so we were talking about how these, the mycelium could also break down, right, things, and which would help so much with also,
Oh.
waste. And I think this is a great transition. So
That's huge.
so talk about like not only how mycelium could break down certain elements, but could also be used it reminds me of hemp a little bit, because
Yeah.
it can almost be used for
Mm.
anything, but how it could help to actually become like a biodegradable packaging device as well. And
Oh,
this
that's
also
huge.
kind of plays into the environmental impact.
So that brings a couple of things to mind. And I think these are probably all Stamets experiments, because I'm just such a Paul Stamets nerd. Like he does so
Oh
much
my
cool
gosh, I
stuff.
know.
But I mean, they've used mushrooms to lift heavy metals from the soil and contaminated sites like that. And then you can just take that biomass and go and compost it out. But I think one of the coolest things he's done is using the mycelium, like building a mat basically to make a filter. So he said he's got this piece of property along the river, and he got in trouble because his runoff has too much nitrates in it, which fuels, rampant algae growth, and you get cyanobacteria, is like the stuff that's poisoning dogs in the Virgin River right now. And so he needed to clean that up or he'd get a fine. And he just got thinking about it, and all the water's running through the soil, right? About like 8 feet deep. And so he just digs a trench and fills it up with wood chips and cardboard, just alternating with mycelium all the way down. And the mycelium kind of branches across the whole thing and makes this wall underground that all the water has to pass through. And I think he cut 90% of the nitrate runoff just
Oh my
being
gosh.
absorbed by the mycelium. And the fungus uses that to grow. So all of a sudden he's just got tons and tons of good mushrooms to eat in that spot that the cows are feeding, because they live uphill.
That was insane.
So there's that kind of thing too. Like anytime, anywhere there's runoff issues, we can employ those kinds of tactics, like
And
for
did it,
a couple $100 plus the cost of renting a Caterpillar.
well, that's just the thing. Like it makes financial sense as
Makes
well.
so much. It's just that simple.
Okay, so well then let me ask you. I mean, I kind of
Sorry.
threw it out there, but I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think is holding things back? And like, I'm not sure if you're a gambling man, but what do you think? I mean, if you had to bet, do you think that we would start getting past some of this fungophobia sometime soon? Like, what's it going to take? Are you starting to see it? How many years?
It's coming. It's coming for sure. Like you see everyone's drinking what, mud water now. That's
Yeah.
a huge step
Mhm.
toward fungus love culture, right?
Oh yeah.
That's,
Oh yeah.
they're starting to
Yep.
recognize the medicinal qualities and uses. And then I mean other companies are starting to use molding to grow mycelium to replace styrofoam packaging. So I mean that's going to start coming into play and already has apparently in some products. And some companies are using the mycelium to grow furniture and stuff. And when you dry that out, it creates this really light, super hard compound. But so
Dude, that
I
is
think
so
as
crazy.
it sort of is more introduced into our everyday product and everyday life, the fungophobia will start disappearing. Even just at the grocery store over the last 3 years, I've seen an increase of mushroom quality and selection, which
It's
is just
definitely
awesome.
trendy. You know, people are now talking about lion's
Yeah.
mane, and you know, they kind of know the difference between these different mushrooms. And yeah, I think a lot of barriers are starting to come down on it, which is so awesome. And I think honestly, this is, I mean, maybe not the only answer, but a giant answer for some of the biggest problems facing humanity and the
It
planet right
could
now.
be massive. It could solve so much. Like
And
it's
what does
just
Paul Stamets
insane.
say about like mycelium connecting? Basically, it's like the web of life that's like just beneath our feet. Like it connects almost every single living thing.
It almost says if you step on a patch of mycelium rich soil, every mushroom within 17 miles knows about it. But that's always kind of stumped me because I don't know like what they're doing with that information. But I mean, it makes sense that the electrical impulses could spread that far, the hyphae that interconnected and
Mhm.
stuff.
Isn't it also the like the mind or the communication mechanism between trees that like how trees communicate with each other
Mm.
underground? And so it's like if a lumberjack is out there and like chops into a tree, then like an impulse is sent down through the roots, through mycelium, down through like the bed underneath the trees that
Yes.
sends the communication to the other trees around it, and they start secreting more carbon or something like that. Don't quote me on that.
They'll send off and
Yeah.
complex like volatile compounds basically that the other trees can pick up. Yeah, trees communicate a lot of ways, but the mycorrhizal fungi is definitely one of the big ones. Apparently, I just read yesterday that they make sounds. I don't know what for. I don't think they know what for yet, but they're making sounds and they're like talking in
Wait, what do
such
you
a
mean
high
they're making
frequency that we
sounds?
can't
Wait,
they're
what?
they're
What's
clicking. If you get a microphone that can pick up that high frequency and then pitch it down,
trees are?
yeah, they're clicking at each other. Plants are. All
Whoa.
the plants are. It seems like
This is why I can talk to trees when I
Well,
this is like some
mushrooms.
new.
well, that's
All makes
well,
sense now. I'm hearing that higher frequency.
we're all just
Yeah.
made of the same stuff. Yeah.
it's,
We're just
it's pretty
walking
bizarre.
trees. Yeah.
And I mean the
Wow.
fungus. There's another. So I wrote this paper last year, I think, about this research they've been doing with fungus down in Arizona to fight bark beetles, right? Because that's just
Mhm.
been ripping through and eating the Cambrian, the lower bark layer and destroying all the forests. They're lighting on fire and stuff. So this team at Arizona State University has been using, well, the craziest experiment I read from them, but they've been using fungus a lot in this regard to fight bark beetles, is they found that if they put a speaker up on the tree and played the sound of like bark beetles dying, it stimulated the growth of this fungus in the tree so much that the bark beetles didn't have time to clean the spores off of each other. And so the fungus would just wash the tree up underneath the bark layer and just like eat up all the beetles.
That's
And it's just like,
crazy cool.
but it
Wow.
seems like it was stimulated by the sound, like by that specific pattern. They tried a bunch of stuff. They tried like literally Beatles music to start, and then they tried like heavy metal, but they landed on that. And it's
Oh my
bizarre.
gosh, that is
It's
bizarre.
mind-blowing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, let's talk about let's dive into it then. Let's get into the magic aspect. And well, maybe
Lord.
actually, before we get there, because I'd like to actually end on that. It feels to me like the brain was prepared or over time through evolution, right? We created this relationship with mushrooms that we have lost. I feel like,
Oh, I love
because
evolution.
when I start introducing it back into my life, it's like, I mean, and we've been able to study the receptors in the brain, the psilocybin receptors. And so it's like we're like a pair matched in heaven, but like we have been separated for a long time, and we've forgotten, a lot of that. So talk to me about some of the mental health benefits that come from consuming mushrooms.
Oh man, where do you even start? It's
I know, right?
incredible. I mean, one of the best analogies I've heard is when the psilocybin comes in the house, it opens up all the doors in the house. And when the psilocybin leaves, all the doors get closed again, but you still remember the layout of the house. Like, it just allows parts of your brain to talk to other parts of your brain that are not usually allowed. And I think the research seems to indicate that that's super powerful for healing sort of traumas and rebuilding the neural, or like changing the neural pathways that you've spent a long time building up. You could just break those, well, not break them up, because that's not,
It's not destructive, right?
yeah, but just like to negate them, to build pathways around them. And I'm just, it accelerates the building of neural networks, as far as I understand.
Well, they do have, a lot of brain scans of people, taking psilocybin, and they're able to trace the neural activity, the electro, magnetic activity or whatever is happening within the brain. And you see these, like, literally what you just mentioned feels like is happening, or like visually happening in your mind. What's happening in a chemical or an electric sense is, yeah, like there are certain parts of the brain that are connecting for the first time maybe ever, and you're kind of able to connect different pathways, make bridges in your mind. A lot of people say, and I know this is true for me, helped me kind of see a lot of shadows in my life, almost like there was a second Trevor, just as real as this one. I'm only able to see the best 50% of me for my own mental health, right? And so, like, we don't look at certain aspects of ourselves. And so when those barriers come down, when those bridges are made, we're able to peer into that other side of ourselves. And a lot of people see that as maybe like scary, or like, you're hallucinating, and there's gonna be something that swoops in and deceives you, and they but really what it is, this deceiver is yourself. And you've only been deceiving yourself up until you can actually like see that kind of dark side, and be able to really, for me anyway, it was like I was able to realize that I was my own stumbling block. But I wasn't able to get past it because I couldn't even see it. It was, right in front of me. It's right here. You know what I mean? But I was unable to look at it. Yeah. So does that make sense?
That's the most powerful thing, is that it lets you kind of step back from your whole life and just examine it objectively. And you don't ever get that opportunity. Otherwise, like, people won't tell you straight up what's going on. If you're acting like a dick, who's going to tell you you're acting like a dick?
And who's got time to dedicate a decade to sit in a cave? If you could sit in a cave for 10 years and meditate, I'm sure you could probably start like being a little more aware. But yeah,
it's like cheat codes. It's like drinking some of that. That's why it's called a trip, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
I just got back from a cave.
yeah, exactly. No, it does feel like a trip. Like, yeah, like a full on, like, multi-year journey.
Yeah. It's kind of incredible that way.
Sorry, Harmony.
You were gonna say I was something. Just saying it's so good for old people like me. I don't really call myself old. I shouldn't say that. For people that just you get into patterns, into a monotony, into a certain way of thinking. We kind of get a little pessimistic even about all of these, like, you know what? The world's broken. There's nothing we can do. It's just shit. There's no way we can solve it. Our little plastic straws aren't going to do it. Like, whatever. We just have to join it and go along and do this monotony and martyrdom and pessimistic. I don't know how to explain it, but we kind of just get stuck, right, in these ruts. And it's so beautiful for us to be able to have all of our wisdom and our knowledge. We don't have to let that go. We don't have to let what we've learned over our lifetime go and not use it, but be able to use it with a different lens on, with a different view, and actually maybe make some changes in the world, actually right here and do something different.
And I think that's why we've hit on a couple things here, but when they say it helps with anxiety and depression, I think a lot of people that haven't tried a macro dose, right? I know that it does help in micro doses as well, right? But with a macro dose of some, psilocybin, and like, then you're able to actually see what's holding you back. You're able to see why you're sad. You're able to, and that's why it helps with depression, anxiety, I mean, one of the reasons.
Lets you step back and take a look at the attachments that you've built, because it's always the attachments that are causing the anxiety and depression. And it's always the attachments that cause all the suffering, right? Even just attachment to a label that you think of yourself as, that seems to be sort of what
resistance to change.
That's the dark
resistance
side of the
to
brain,
change.
dude. It's all attachment.
And so I mean, and it's hard to really explain this to somebody that hasn't tried it. That's the hard thing, you know what I mean? And so it's just, but I think, and here's the thing, and this is the truth, right? Like we're not advocating for anybody to go out there and do any macro dose of any drug, ladies and gentlemen. But this is a medicine that has so many healing benefits. It's non-lethal. I mean, I don't think you can. I don't think it's physically possible to take too much mushrooms, right? You would have to eat, I think, 2 times your weight.
Yeah, I think it was
something to for a percentage chance or something. So, but anyway, but I think the thing that you most need to have caution with is your psychological health. Is when you're doing these things. I mean, when you're ready for it, it'll call for you, I feel like, but definitely I'm just glad that I was introduced to this as an adult, not saying that, maybe late teens or early 20s or whatever that looks like, could be helpful, beneficial for people. I'm glad that I kind of came to it in my 30s because I was much more apt to do my research, know exactly dosage, buy a micro scale. What are the different strains? What's my brain ready for, because not everybody is ready to just go from today I was super conservative religious, and then tomorrow I'm going to just take, 7 grams of mushrooms, in the desert by myself.
All that religious, dude. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. But it could have the potential of putting somebody in a psychotic break, like psychosis, you know what I mean? If you're not ready for it and you take strides. So what would you say to people, just for safety, you know what I mean? When doing microdosage, macrodosage, anything with mushrooms.
Oh, it's always just mindset and setting. That's all you need. Set, if your brain's in a good place that week or that,
So that's what you mean by set, right? It's yourself, your
mindset.
own
You have to, you can't have anything chewing on you in the back of your head, or else you're not going to handle a big trip well. Especially if there's something that's just looming that there's nothing you can do about. But then setting too, having somewhere that's just beautiful, that you're safe and nothing crazy is going to happen.
Even though it always does. It always does. It seems like right when you have everything under control. And I agree with what you just said, by the way. I think absolutely. But there's always a journey waiting for you, I feel like. But isn't it weird that and maybe I'm the only one, but it seems like every time I do a macro dose or I'm gonna have a psychedelic experience, something that would never happen happens. It's just it's like the universe plays a trick on you every time. But anyway,
I've never experienced anything like that. I've been quite lucky, I feel.
Yeah, maybe I've just been with too many people. Probably I just need to be more alone. That's the thing. Okay, so wait, let's talk about that real quick. So have you guys done both solo and group, both and have you done it in a ritual setting, and have you done it in a more social party setting? Let's go to Brady first on that.
Brady.
I'm not a fan of the party setting, of the party dose at all. I think it's just using that tool. It's like trying to use a hammer as a screwdriver. You're gonna miss a lot of the benefit of the introspection and of the humanity in a chaotic environment like that. So even on It's fun on a microdose, but it feels like it kind of defeats the purpose to me. I feel small group or alone, and either on a really little dose or a really big dose is my way for
Yeah,
sure.
Stay away from those in-betweener dosage.
Yeah, I
I
don't
think you
do
can
party
feel in-
doses.
You can feel into the dosage that is right for you at that time.
Mhm.
I've seen some people do muscle testing and
Cool.
decide that like 1.3 grams, which a lot of people would be like, no, that's you're in the in-between land. Don't do that. And it worked out just great
Just
for the
co-
feeling they needed to connect. One of them was struggling. Their mom had passed away, and it was just that perfect dose to kind of connect and really feel into that, let themselves be sad, let themselves process through it, and come out on the other side feeling like their mom had just told them, you know, you gotta remember how we used to laugh together. You gotta keep laughing. You gotta keep enjoying life. Like, go and don't let me drag you down, kind of thing. And it was brilliant for
Wow,
it.
that's
So
that's deep.
I think you
Yeah.
can
My mind just
feel-
went places with that story.
Yeah, I've been
Aw.
That
pushing
how are
shit.
like our ancestors are all within us, and that's how eternity works.
Yeah, those
Well,
answers are all inside of us.
I was gonna say that for me, a microdose of mushrooms feels like Adderall for me.
Oh,
So
interesting.
Yeah,
I'm able to get
much-
a shit ton done. I'm able to problem solve.
everything's interesting.
I'm effective. Everything's
Awesome.
interesting. Think colors are just a little more vibrant, and I'm not tripping. You know what I mean? I'm on. I feel like I'm turned on. Yeah. And you know, kind of that bridge between a microdose and a macrodose can be a little, you know, iffy at times. I feel like because one day it's just weird, right? Because like not every mushroom's the same, and not every day your body is the same, right? And so how they interact together and the chemicals collide can just be so different,
Wow.
even though like, what? I took the same dose last week and it hit me totally different. So, but anyway, but a macro dose for me, like now, I'd be lying if I said I haven't had a fun time socially with mushrooms. Okay.
Mhm.
But what
Oh,
it was,
definitely fun.
yeah, I mean, we were giggling our asses off, and like, but that
Yeah.
was just like we're just kind of nibbling at it as we're going, playing cards throughout the night, and just, you know, kind of doing that kind of thing, right? But like to
And
do
I
a macro dose, oh my gosh, within a group is just so unsettling for me now because I've just had so many bad trips.
yeah, I want to just say I don't think I think that is still beneficial. Like, is if you're not out being risky, doing whatever, something that can help you laugh and release some worries
That can
and
be
tension
huge
in a healthy
sometimes.
way. We're not like damaging our bodies. You're not out of
Mhm.
control. And just a small dose where you can laugh. You guys, there's so much value in laughter and frivolous nothingness. I don't know how to like just pleasure and having fun and joy. There is value in that. That is not just like, well, you
100.
can't just do
Oh
it. You
my
have to do
gosh.
the
Oh
deep
yeah.
healing work. You got to go deep and you got to look at your shadow and you got to heal. Like,
Well,
that's not
and
the
isn't that the
only-
beautiful part about mushrooms though, is like it gives you like, it shows you polarity, because within the same hour you can visit heaven and hell on a mushroom. Yeah.
Rock and roll, dude.
so true.
Super duper.
So true.
Okay, well, before as we close here, let's talk about bad trips real quick and what that definition is to like all of us, maybe, right? Because I think that's maybe something that a lot of people are scared of. You know, for me now, like when I do a macro dose of any psychedelic, but especially mushrooms, because mushrooms feels heavy to me, right? It's like other things like feel like
Less
beaming and
controlled.
bright and creative, you know, like, you know, acid, for
Mhm.
example. Whereas mushrooms for me, yeah, I feel like it's definitely rooting. It's like ancestral type stuff, like, you know, inner child trauma work that I have to do. And it's just like heavy, you know what I mean? But like I come out of it and I feel like I'm like resurrected in a way, like I'm a brand new person, you know,
Newborn
and
baby mode, man. I'm about it.
but like I wouldn't have gotten there if there weren't the bad, hard aspects of the trip. You know what I mean? So it's like, is there really a bad trip, or was that just a
Yeah.
difficult thing to go through at the time?
I don't know if I believe in them.
Yeah.
I believe in hard trips. Mushrooms give you what you need.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Maybe.
it's got to be. Maybe
maybe-
it's a bad trip if you try and fight it.
Mm.
Yeah,
Like, if
oh
you're
yeah.
just open
Mhm.
to it, you can't have a bad trip. If you're not, you might have it's the fighting. That's the scary part.
And even
Totally.
yeah, even a bad trip in the moment, can be very beneficial. A lot of people come out of it saying like, "Oh my God, that was like years of therapy in like
Mhm.
3 hours,"
Done that,
Yeah.
for
because of
sure.
that. Yeah. Yeah. And
I
that's
don't
not going to be
Couple
easy. That's not going to be
mantras, call
just,
I've heard so many people, to your point, say like once they stopped fighting it, they
Mhm.
were like the
Same.
bad part, the hard part of the trip just released into beauty. And once they like went through that, like, okay, you want to show me all the, all these terrible things. All right, I'm just gonna allow that to come. And then they move right through those into the beauty. So it's fascinating.
well, as it says in like the first paragraph of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which I highly recommend to anybody that's going to do any
Yes,
macrodosing,
sir.
and that John Lennon repeated for us, turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream, baby.
I love it. Okay, you two, you said yes to the Tibetan Book of Dead really fast. I got a couple minutes.
Oh, it's just
Why should I read that? So great about it.
good stuff.
That's a
to
great
chew
way
on.
to end. Yeah.
It's like the Dhammapada for me. There's just ideas and ideas and ideas in there that you can just flip open and have something to chew on all day.
Well, what it is really is it was a preparatory work for those that were confronting death, right? All the way back from ancient, Southeast Asia. And so these scripts were passed on over time, right? And anyways, just a really interesting look, and I think a very like wide open kind of look at death. And it really does walk you through the different stages of death, both physically and psychologically, but mostly psychologically. It kind of walks you through it. And the reason why that applies here to mushrooms and to psychedelics in general is that the reason why you trip, the reason why you have this kind of judgment day is everyone's heard of like your life flashing before your eyes, right? And people coming back from like an NDE or whatever, totally changing their life because they were able to see that nasty side of them, right? Themselves. And they come back a completely changed person. Well, what's happening when you're taking these mushrooms is that these are micro venom poisons, right? That are sending impulses to the brain saying like, oh, we are dying. And those impulses is what begins this process of the psychological preparation of death that happens. And so I think reading scripts like this, kind of prep your mind for that, because what makes you trip is that and that whole like feeling of judgment day that we were talking about, and everything. It's because you're basically micro poisoning your body, and that's why we're having these awesome experiences. But they're non-lethal, and so we're able to go in and come out, which is really pretty powerful.
It's
Okay.
cool too how the themes of that book and the themes of like my trips sort of. Anytime you have a big trip, there's something about it in the Book of the Dead.
Oh yeah.
It's wild.
Okay. You guys are talking
It's a
me
good
into
one.
it. I think so. I've been kind of on this journey. The whole reason for the podcast, or why I write down my experiences or tell them to people, I tell them to people also because I think it can enhance their lives if they, like the gentleman that really like gave me the push over the edge when he came back. I told him about my experiences on a hike, and he lived in Oregon. It was legal there. He found a legal facilitator and did a journey, and he said it saved my
Rock and
life.
roll.
I was depressed. I was done. Like that
Mhm.
hiking trip to southern Utah was my last shot at
Wow.
anything. But the other reason is I want to keep this alive. I want to live in a different way than the old way I was living. And so in this vein, Brady, why don't you tell us, or you can both chime in with like your best advice to me and anyone else who cares about like how to live a creative, open, just different life, how to not get stuck in the old ways.
Hey Brady, why don't you think on that? Because I'd love for you to end this off, and we can just end with you.
Okay.
I'll just keep mine super short. I think it's having open conversations, right? Like I had this awesome conversation with some family members of mine over Thanksgiving about different substances. They were just curious about, because we've got little cousins running around, coming over to our place. They're very aware that I'm, open to certain compounds, mainly, cannabis and mushroom psilocybin. So, we just talked about that. We talked about what it really means. And I hope anyway that like through the conversation we were having, I was able to break down a few barriers, because they were really kind of scared, if like, what if, this, that, or the other, but I was able to kind of frame it in a way like, and I didn't as much as I wish I would have, but, we're all hooked on something. We're all hooked on something. And, mine is a little more natural. Yours might be a little more pharmaceutical, but I'll tell you, one could have the potential of killing children and the other can't. And, unfortunately it's looked at it, complete opposite way. Right. And so I think just having really open conversations with people about, did you know this? Did you know that? And then also just sharing your experiences, but also just a word of caution. And I'll close with this. The ultra deep experiences that you have, nobody's really going to be able to, it's kind of like casting pearls among swine, to, rob a scriptural reference there, but it does feel that way, right? When you try to explain your super deep experiences. So I would just honestly, my recommendation, recognize what's sacred to you and keep it sacred, keep it to yourself. Don't, it's just not going to translate all of the time.
No.
And there's potential for people to maybe look at you like, oh, well, he's crazy. You know what I mean? Because they can't understand it until they're there. Once they go through it themselves, then it's like, oh, and that's the most fun, right? When you're talking to people that have also tripped, because then it's just like, you can open up about anything because there's no judgment. We've all been there. And it's like, dude, this is what I experienced, right? But until then, reserve some caution there. But everything else, I would say just more conversation,
You're super creative and you were already going to start. So I didn't even need to lead you into it.
Oh, I was liking where it was going.
You're super creative and you're living this life. Like I came to his house. You guys, look at this. Tell me, Trevor, when you see the tree and this beautiful.
I'm just sad you guys didn't get up in there to do the podcast from the tree. We're going to have to do a part 2 now.
Dude,
that would be so Paul Stamets.
So cool.
No, it was the
You get
Wi-Fi
struck
issues.
by lightning.
We had extension cords, we had mics, but not Wi-Fi that could reach out that far. But that was the plan, was to get up in this tree to
hardwire.
Like I come here and it's beautiful. There's people jamming in the living room. I told you I came for jam night. There's people painting in the backyard. He's back there just building, staining something. And there's this beautiful like woman mannequin that is like
Cynthia
that is just loving this branch of golden leaves that are coming down. I'm like, I want that. Oh my gosh, I want that in my backyard. But just this creative life, the painting, the music, the everything you do. I mean, how do I keep that creative life going, I guess?
I think it comes down to just a few rules that we all seem to keep.
Rules.
Yeah. High hopes, low expectations, super important. Expectations kill joy and hopes reap joy. 2, you are under no obligation to be the same person that you were 5 minutes ago. That's very important. I think that's Alan Watts.
My guru.
And then 3, the coolest thing I think about this house, about having, we were just talking about this before you got here, even about how there's 6 different types of artists in this house. And we've all sort of, our crafts branch into different sort of fields. And so we've all sort of patched together this concept that every art form, we've come into this concept that every art form and every craft and everything that a human could want to do runs on the same basic principles. Like we are a strong believer in fractals kind of household. It's the same motions on the micro scale as the macro scale. And keep that in mind. When you don't get your expectations up at all, you'll never be upset.
I love it.
Because that's just attachment. Expectations are just another word for attachment. And attachment just breeds suffering. And that's the rule.
Yeah, I need to remember that when I'm trying to control all of my surroundings.
That was very, very Buddhist of you.
Thank you. That is beautiful way to end. I appreciate both of your time.
Thanks for having me. Sure.
Thanks guys, that was such a fun convo. Man, I could have chatted another couple of hours.
You got to come to jam night when you get a minute.
All
Come
right,
on
man.
down.
I'm on my way.
Next time you're in St. George on a Wednesday.
Okay. Keep that in mind.
Oh, you'll love the Danctuary, dude. I'll tell you about it.
Okay, I'll say it. All right. Well, it seems like we're definitely gonna have to do a part 2 on this because we didn't even like get started on any of Brady's research that he's done in regards to mycelium like at large. And so yeah, let's schedule a part 2.
All right.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Talk.
Thanks, guys.